Beautiful and strong people. Coach Alan here, and today we're going to talk about what should we do if we're overshooting or undershooting our RP. This is an excellent topic that I've actually gotten the idea from our athlete Rafael Hernandez, which came with the question whether or not he should be pulling back some load if he's overshooting his RP. So this lesson is going to be very valuable, especially for the people that are using the RP as the main intensity modulator. I do recommend you guys, and I'm going to put that in the description of this lesson, to go over and watch the guide to RP based training, in which I'm going quite comprehensively about how to properly assess RP, how an RP 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 should be looking like from a speed perspective, from a technique breakdown perspective. Is going to give you a lot of insight about training with RP and using the RP, how the RP is associated with percentages. So I think it's going to be very valuable for you guys to watch this before watching this or after watching this. Okay, so before I'm diving into the framework, we should be asking ourselves, why are we overshooting or undershooting in the first place? Okay, so is it sickness? We're coming off from a cold and it's rather normal to feel like the weights are significantly heavier than they should be. Is it technique? So for example, you're coming from low bar to high bar, okay? And you're definitely not going to handle the same loads you would normally handle with low bar doing the high bar. So we have to take that under account. In the same vein, maybe you're coming from high bar to low bar, and it feels significantly easier because you have a better, control of over your center of mass. Or low bar is just, your lift, your competition style lift, and it feels a lot easier. You're definitely going to be able to and capable to handle more load. Is it a misgroove? So for example, you've missed properly, let's say, bracing, or you forgot to really root your feet hard into the ground, or you yanked the bar off the floor on the deadlift. In such cases, maybe just taking your back off and seeing whether or not it's going to go the same might influence the perception of effort. But if your first back offs are kind of telling you that it's kind of the same perception of effort, then in that case you kind of need to pull back a little bit. Is it a change in equipment? So for example, you're traveling and you're going into a commercial gym that doesn't really have the same let's say rack heights on the bench or on the power rack, or maybe the bench is just completely different than what you're used to benching at home, or maybe the plates are different, the barbells are different, and so on. That can have quite a huge impact on how you're feeling the loads. However, a change in equipment can also mean changing your knee sleeves. So for example, from worn out normal knee sleeves to stiff knee sleeves, you're automatically going to feel much better handling heavier loads. Is it accumulate training fatigue? So for example, you're coming off a competition, or maybe you're coming off from an overreaching block in which we really dialed in a lot of volume. It's normal to feel like the weights that you normally handle might actually feel a little bit heavier than they should be. So you need to pull back a little bit more. Or maybe lifestyle circumstances. You've been busy this week and consumed with other priorities, and it's rather normal to feel like the loads are a little bit heavier than they should be. Or just a combination of all of these that we have here. We still have to take a decision. Whether, it's a sickness, it's a technique thing, it's a misgroove, it's a change in equipment, accumulate training fatigue, or just lifestyle circumstances. Okay? So the way I've made the framework is based on overshooting and undershooting. And more specifically, what we should be doing on that training day with the back offs, and what we should be doing as a perspective for the next week. Okay, so I broke it down from 0.5 RP, 1.5 RP, and 2 to 3 RP. So for example, if you have been prescribed the 7 RP and it just feels like a 7.5, you're still within the prescribed RP. Okay, so I would take the same back offs and I would take the same normal jump for the next week. If that turns into a 6.5 RP, again, I would keep things the same. So nothing major. You don't need to go up in load. You are still within the prescribed RP in there. Maybe it just felt a little bit heavier or just a little bit lighter. Now, if you are going above 1 RP, so instead of doing a 6 RP, you're doing something like 7.5. That load might actually be a little bit too much, or I wouldn't even really say too much. It's probably a little bit over what we initially need for that effort to actually build momentum. So I would just pull back some of the back offs, so something like 2.5% pulling back from the initial load. And for the load next week, I would just repeat it. Because if you are within 7.5 instead of a 6, maybe next week you may potentially be within a 7 RP where we should normally land. If, however, it just feels significantly easier, you can add 2.5% on your back offs and add 2.5% over the load for the next week. Now, if that RP is turning into something like that 6 RP turns into something like a 8 RP, 8.5, even 9, we have a problem. We have a problem because the load is significantly heavier than it should be, and that's going to really bottleneck your overall momentum during the block. So we need to pull back. We need to pull back on the back offs, anywhere around 5% to 7.5%, based on how heavy it really feels. And for the load next week, I would definitely pull back. Anywhere around 5% to 7% is going to suffice. If you're undershooting, just go up. Go up on the back offs. Go up on the load next week with 5%. 5% should suffice. In the general in a general consensus, I would be okay with undershooting, especially early in the block. So if first 2 weeks of the block are just significantly easier, keep that energy in the tank for week 4. That's going to give you a tremendous amount of confidence towards that week 4 or week 5 or week 3, whatever structure of block you have. But if you're overshooting, that's really going to make it much more difficult to build momentum throughout the block. And if you're ending the block with an RPE 10, an all-out effort, or you're even missing reps, that's going to diminish your confidence getting into the new block. That's going to accumulate a lot more fatigue getting into the new block, fatigue that needs to be dissipated in one way or another. So we may potentially have to take like 1 deload a week just so you can, be fresh and get back into the groove. So I would be okay with athletes undershooting, especially early in the block, rather than overshooting. I hope this is helpful. If you guys got any questions in regards to the presentation, just shoot me a message. I'm going to make sure to leave this folder in there so you guys have you can take a look or just copy the framework. I'm going to put it on viewer, so once you're opening the link, you can just make a copy on your own Google Drive so you can actually have it. I hope this is helpful. I'll catch you next time.